What's up, guys? Welcome into Good Morning Lambeau. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. You can find me on Twitter at Packers_access. You can email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us 865-658-5824. I'm joined alongside Tim live in Green Bay. Tim, got a new chair back here, my man. Look at this. You kidding me?
Oh, snap.
Yeah, Mandy came through in the clutch for Christmas. Loving it.
Like one of them Formula One race car chairs right there, man.
Going to come in tomorrow with a race helmet on. You know what I mean? Have the whole 9 yards. Have the Hans device. Have me strapped down to the chair. You know what I mean? We'll be ready to roll, gloves and all. But we're excited to get in here and talk about the Vikings game coming up. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. There's so many different storylines to kind of feed into. You know, they're battling a ton of injuries. Some people are going, yeah, so are we. I'm kind of looking at it, to be honest with you, Tim. Like, you know what? I feel like we're in better shape than them injury wise. I mean, they're missing their starting quarterback. They just lost their starting tight end, and this is a grizzled tight end. Some would say one of the top 5 tight ends in the league. You know, with Hawkinson going out with I think it was the ACL, MCL, might have been a PCL too.
I think it was everything but the PCL.
Yeah,
so he's got some of his knee left.
A thing to watch too in real time. You know, thank God his foot didn't get hung in the turf, but still, man, you could just see that thing kind of, it was ugly. But nonetheless, we've got, like I said, a ton to talk about. Let's start off with the injuries here too. Well, let's go to the chat real quick. I apologize. I just want to give a shout out to everybody. We got Omer in here hanging out. We got Sam in the house, Carly Ray, United Bates, Derek K. Sorry if I say them twice. We got Jim in here. Good morning, Jim. Good to see you, buddy. Nick McSwain in the house, Drew D, the whole crew up in here hanging out. We appreciate y'all making us a part of your morning. It's always good to chat with y'all. So let's try to stay on topic. Let's being me, okay? I'm talking to myself here. I'm going to try to stay on topic, and we're going to get through this. We got a ton to cover. First things first, we're going to hit on Jaire Alexander. No, I'm just joking. Rob Demovsky tweeted out the injury.
Spit up the coffee, man.
Yeah. So yesterday, injuries dropped. Obviously, we didn't get to it on the show, but Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks both practiced. This is from Rob Demovsky on Twitter. You'll give him a follow at Rob Demovsky. Reed did not play at Carolina, and Wicks, with the chest injury, got hurt during the game with the chest injury, I should say. However, Christian Watson stayed inside after stretching, although he had a helmet. Other DMPs, Campbell, Jenkins, and then returned was Savage. So Darnell Savage is back at practice. Now, if we look at the injury report all together here, just want to key in on the most important aspects, okay? So the did not participate. Devondre Campbell, I think we would all agree he's probably not going to play, right? Elton Jenkins did not participate, the shoulder and the knee. This is pretty much how it's been on Wednesdays all year long, if I remember correctly. It seems like he takes Wednesday off. Thursday's limited. Then he's back at practice on Friday. I'm expecting Elton to play for sure. And then, of course, you've got the did not participate Christian Watson with the hammy, like we mentioned. Wicks did not participate with the chest/ankle injury. I'd be surprised if Wicks doesn't go. Hopefully he's okay. Jaden Reed being back, that's huge. Got the toe injury in the chest. It's not COVID toe, everybody. Calm down. It's not that big of a deal, all right? But as far as the limiteds, A.J. Dillon, Kingsley Enagbare, Aaron Jones, Luke Musgrave, Jonathan Owens, Jaden Reed, Robert Rochelle, Darnell Savage, again, he returned but limited. T.J. Slayton limited with a knee and a foot. And then, of course, Quay Walker limited with the shoulder, which someone did point out. I thought this was kind of cool. I love that people were reaching for positives. I think it was Steve Cook on Twitter tweeted at me a Ross Uglum tweet, and Quay Walker, I think, is in the top 3 or the top 5 according to tackle grade on PFF, which is good. You notice we haven't shown him missing tackles much this year. The problem knock has been the run defense, the run gap fit, all that, and the coverage grade. I think he graded out in run defense in the 80s, and according to PFF in coverage, he was like 127. So that took a step back, but the tackling got shored up. That's how he's got high tackle numbers again. Just something to kind of monitor there. You're seeing him shore up the tackling ability, which we knew he made a lot of tackles last year. It's always been his strength, but you still seen quite a bit of missed tackles last year. There was just a lot of opportunities. So just to kind of keep our finger on the pulse there. When we look at the Minnesota Vikings side, did not participate, Jordan Addison. That's huge if he doesn't play. I'm assuming he's not going to play. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Cornerback, I think it's Mekhi Blackman, did not participate. Sheldon Day, defensive lineman, was limited. Troy Dye was limited as well. Theo Jackson, safety, did not participate, as well as Alexander Madison was limited with the ankle. Byron Murphy Jr. with the knee did not participate. Naylor at wide receiver did not participate. And let's see who else is on here. Of course, we know that Hawk is not on this list because he's now on our season-ending injury there with the knee injury. Harrison Phillips, defensive tackle, limited participation. And then Jaquelin Roy, I think is how you say it, ankle injury on the defensive line. Interior defensive lineman did not participate. So they're dealing with injuries as well. Not as long a list of ours, but several of theirs obviously already on the hour, not popping up here. Anything stick out to you before we move on to kind of the preview of this game, Tim?
Yeah, Jordan Addison. That's definitely one to watch because we talk a lot about Justin Jefferson up there, but he's not their only threat as a wide receiver. Of course, the quarterback issues might help us in that category as far as who's throwing these receivers the ball. But yeah, you're right. Not quite as long a list as we have here in Green Bay, and also seems like most of their issues seem to be on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen a lot of linebackers, defensive tackles, corners. If you look at our report, it's a little more balanced, but probably a little more offense on that injury report. But I don't know. It's almost like a 60-40 split with ours. But we have a lot of limited participants, which is a good sign. Usually gearing up towards game day, those guys that are limited will probably go full and or stay limited and then end up, active on game day. The do not participates are the ones you got to watch. So Minnesota's got more of those than we do. So keep our eye on this as the week progresses.
Definitely. Tim Rees in the chat. Appreciate you swinging through, buddy. Says, do they drop Jaire off the injury list when he was suspended? So every time that Jaire gets mentioned today, we know it's going to tick people off. We're going to hit them with this. Every single time. So now I imagine we won't know the answer. I think I understand what you're asking there, Tim. It's like, okay, is he no longer technically injured, or did they drop him off because he's suspended? We'll find out next week, right? If he pops back up on the injury list, great. Once the suspension's over, I imagine that suspension ends after the game Sunday, because it was just it didn't say we're suspending him for a week, right? It said we're suspending him for the game on Sunday. So with that being said, we'll probably know by Monday, when the next injury report drops next Wednesday, whether he's, healthy or not. And I will say this, if he all of a sudden is magically healthy after the suspension, then I think we would all agree there might have been a little bit of that, what we were talking about, that some people were mentioning behind the scenes. Been no merit to it to this point, but it could be the case. So just another example there of people berating me about not wanting to talk about Jaire Alexander, and then the chat, it's on Jaire Alexander. So
yeah,
Drew D in the chat says, even if Addison plays, he might not be effective being a speedy wide receiver with an ankle issue. Yeah, he's a pretty good route runner, Drew. I agree with that. Even if he does play, it's going to be in a limited fashion. But you know how it is, man. They get a shot in that ankle, Tim, and next thing you know, boy, they're right back to normal. I remember who was talking about. I think it was Favre was talking about when Reggie White hurt him, right? Hurt his shoulder the year before Reggie came to Green Bay, landed on him and separated his shoulder. Favre said his shoulder was like down underneath his chest plate or whatever, like he had completely separated. He said they shot it up. He said, man, this feels great. Like I can't feel anything. This was on his non-throwing shoulder, obviously, but he said it was just cracking and popping every time he moved it because it was still out of place. But that shot numbed it so much that he could go out and play. It's just wild to me. So you never know with some of the medical stuff here. They may be able to give him a shot in that ankle. He'll go out there and be
just shows you what being a football player is, right? I mean, just numb it. I'll be fine. It's like, well, you're not. It's still all jacked up. You just don't feel it, and you're willing to go out there and just bang heads like that is, yeah, man. I always say that. People talk about what a great quarterback Brett Favre was. Brett Favre was a football player, man. Just a football player.
Carly Ray in the chat says, would be a great drinking game for an evening show. What is Jaire's birthday? Do you think green is Jaire's favorite color?
Oh, yeah.
All the way down the line. So I got to hit you with 3 of those real quick. Sorry. Now we got that out of the way. Let's keep it moving here. So let's see. As far as the PFF preview, right, and the preview of the game itself, I just want to mention real quick shout out to BetUS, the official sports book of Packers Total Access Live. Appreciate them jumping on board with us. Again, they're America's favorite sports book, been in business since 1994. Been doing it for a long time. Appreciate them, like I said, partnering up. There's a link in the description of this video if you want to support the show. By spending $0, you just click on that link, go to their website, using that link, register for free as a customer, and that puts us in better standing with BetUS because you use that specific link. We appreciate them again. When you look at the spread, just overall, it still hasn't changed according to PFF's green line. Again, BetUS hadn't changed as of last night. The Vikings are still 2-point favorites at home. You can find those odds on BetUS right here at -110 for both the +2 and the -2, whether you're picking the Packers or the Vikings there. Over-under set at 46.5. Going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Again, that's BetUS, the official sports book of Packers Total Access. Now, when we look at the breakdown here, Tim, to kind of get into the details, Vikings offense. Let's start on the Vikings offensive side of the ball. Many people are asking, okay, how do they attack defenses? Kind of what's their MO, that type of thing. When we look at the personnel they stay in, all right, they're in 21 personnel 7% of the time. That's 10th highest in the league, 21 being 2 running backs, 1 tight end, which will obviously trigger our 34 defense base, okay? 11 personnel, they're in 64% of the time. That is 18th most in the league. And then 12 personnel, they're in 22% of the time, which is 13th most. So this is a very multiple approach, okay? Some people are going, what's the big deal, man? When you play 12 personnel as opposed to 21 personnel, both of those trigger your 34 base. You're absolutely right. But the issue is when there's an old saying, like LaFleur said earlier this year, one back equals 1 gap. 2 backs equals 2 gap. Okay. So it comes down to how you're going to play the run. Is someone responsible for just 1 gap, or are they responsible for 2? It really adds a different dimension to the running game when you've got 2 backs in the backfield. And some teams are kind of clinging to that a bit. Vikings are one of those with, running the 10th most in the league. Now, the problem is when they're in 21 personnel, their EPA drops all the way down to 24. Now, some people are saying, what is EPA? You'll hear me mention it from time to time. It's not my favorite metric. What you'll find is you've got some people that watch the tape, right? You've got some people that lean on EPA. They tweet about it all the time. You got others that tweet about PFF all the time. What I find happening, and it's not to judge people fan how you want, you know what I mean? I'm just, from my perspective, the reason I don't try to put too much stock in all of those or one individual, and I like to take them all into consideration, is because EPA is expected points added, okay? It's basically a range in which they're going to grade a play. Each play, it's said that it goes from -14 all the way up to +10 on each play. Now, it's very rare I've seen a -14 when I've kind of looked into it. It's like, well, don't focus so much on the -14. I've heard some people say it's actually just -7 is the peak. I don't think that's the case either. Nonetheless, it doesn't factor in the specifics. And what I mean by that, like, for instance, one of the examples they use on their glossary there on their site, when I say they, SIS uses EPA religiously. This right here, this information I just pulled came from the 33rd team. They lean on SIS data religiously. You see the EPA rankings and all that, right? All their data, to the best of my knowledge, comes from SIS. They have a partnership with SIS, which is a great website. It's just another tool we can use, right? So it doesn't factor in the specifics. Like, for instance, if you got all the way down to the opponent's 1 yard line, right? And let's say that you throw an interception and it's a pick 6 return. That's the worst case scenario. And, theoretically speaking, should be a -14 EPA on that play, right? Because it factors in what's expected on that play. The problem is that interception, Tim, I don't mean to be long-winded. I just want to explain this real quick because I don't want to just go EPA, and people not understand what it is. If you throw a pick 6 on the 1 yard line, it can be a perfectly accurate throw, and it hit off your receiver's hands, bounce up in the air, and a corner pick it off and take it for 6. Guess what? The EPA is the maximum penalty that you can give on that play. You see what I'm saying? Like, as where PFF would look at that and go, that was an accurate throw. He did everything that he was supposed to do there. So That's why it's important to take this stuff into consideration. That's why if you look at our defense, according to EPA and on the 33rd team, it's graded out horrible all year long. But when we turn on the tape, this is where the tape comes in. And typically the people who like to lean on EPA cringe at someone talking about watching the tape because they're too lazy to go watch the tape is really what it comes down to. But if you take all that into consideration, then you can see where they can conflict with each other. We turn on the tape and we go, okay, blown coverage, this, that, the other, right? People see the EPA and they think, okay, this is a horrible defense because of the coaches. Partly, yes. But as far as on the field, there's blown assignments. There's missed tackles, all of those things. So it all has its place. That's why we try to cover all three, the tape, the PFF, the EPA, former players' opinion, all that. We try to cover it here. So when you look at the EPA rankings, 21 personnel, they're ranked 24th. Okay. With 11 personnel, they're ranked 13th. So slightly better, they've had significantly more success out of 11 personnel. And then with 12, it's at 20th. So you're seeing when they trigger a base defense, whether it's their 21 or their 12, they're not as effective as if they're in 11. So I say that because when you combine those two, you're looking at 29% of the snaps. Theoretically speaking, 29% of the snaps this Sunday is going to have our base defense on the field. Something to keep in mind. Now, is it clicking with you why you end up with Preston Smith covering Justin Jefferson?
Yep.
Because we're in 34 base a larger majority of the time against a team like the Vikings. And what they like to do is they like to come out and empty it out occasionally. They'll run a 12 or a 21, empty the backfield out. Guess what happens in that situation? Unless you want to be -1 in coverage, an outside linebacker is going to have to drop into coverage. It's just important to mention those things. So go ahead, Tim.
They're going to try and take us out of nickel or keep us out of nickel to utilize,
those matchups
in their targets. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And that's why I get frustrated when people go, oh, Joe Barry's an idiot. He's got Preston Smith out there covering him. Going, this happens all across the league. I showed 4 or 5 different clips of this happening to other 34 base defenses across the league. And then it immediately goes, you're not trying to compare TJ. I can't believe you're comparing TJ Watt to Preston Smith. I'm like, you missed the whole point, bud.
Yeah.
The point is TJ.
You have a better argument arguing 4-3 versus 3-4 concepts.
Right. Like TJ Watt is not an inside linebacker. They didn't go into that week going, all right, TJ, here's the plan, buddy. We want you covering the seam. It was a specific situation where they went trips to one side. They're in a 34 base zone. And guess what? Unless you want to go down, unless you want to be -1 on that side of the ball, TJ's got to drop into coverage there because it's a cover 3 call. So that's how you end up with those specific situations. Now, if you mention it on Twitter, you're just defending Joe Barry. I'm just saying that's how you get to that point. As long as the 34 defense will be a thing in the NFL, I don't think it's going anywhere. John Madden, to the best of my knowledge, invented it back in the 70s, and it's stuck ever since. Unless the 34 defense just magically disappears, you're always going to have situations where the offense will manipulate the personnel, empty out the backfield, and make your outside linebacker have to cover from time to time. It's what Kevin Green had to do back in the day. Greg Lloyd had to do it as he played Sam the majority of the time there. These are the things, maybe not the majority. He played a lot of Will too, but these are the things that come into factor when you're running a zone 34 defense.
And this is why we put a priority on athletic linebackers and guys that, have the physical attributes to do what is asked, really. I mean,
yeah.
Preston Smith is getting up there in his in football years, kind of like dog years, right? So, but his athleticism is what keeps him on the field. He's still an athletic edge, and doesn't do half bad in coverage sometimes, guys. We've got to ease up a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Put him in the slot, man.
When I cringe every time I see the screen grabs, man. I cringe. I'm just like, gosh. And I'm the type of person, like, if I see someone else tweeted on their wall, I'm not going to go knock on their door and go, hey, you understand why they're doing that, right? I won't do that. If somebody asks me, of course, I'll answer the question. But I don't, whether someone's wrong or not, or they maybe don't quite understand that concept, it has nothing to do with me going over and knocking on their door and going, hey, let's talk about this. Like,
right.
Somebody asks me, of course, we'll have a conversation. But the problem I have is when I put it up on my Twitter page, hey, look, here's why it's happening, and then people attack me, but that's not going to fly. Let's go ahead and hit that block. Let's move on, move on. If you want to have a logical conversation, I'm down with it, but I'm not going to sit there and argue with people. Like Matt Ramage said, Matt Ramage just mutes them. I like blocking them because I want them to know, bro, you're not getting any of this content anymore, okay? You want to be about to say a bad word. You want to be rude, then you're not going to get it, okay? It's that simple. You're not happy with it. I'm not going to give it to you. It's a win-win. But Matt Ramage puts them on mute, and he always posts that gif of people that guy having a conversation with the brick wall. I love that. So it's like they don't even realize he can't see them talking. That's probably the more I want to say that's the more mature way to handle it, but it really isn't, to be honest with you. I would rather go, hey, look, we're parting ways. But Ramage is awesome. I love that guy. All right, so let's talk about offensive identity for the Vikings. They're in shotgun 53% of the time. I'm hoping I get these correct. It's really, really blurry. I'm going to kill my cam so I can get close here real quick. So they're in shotgun 53% of the time. That's the dead last in the league, guys. So they're in the gun the dead last amount, which is still 53% of the time. Kind of shows you the direction the league has gone. They're under center, obviously, 47% of the time. They're under center the most in the league, guys, in the league. So that kind of puts things into perspective of when we talk about the Shanahan system, everybody goes, well, this is supposed to be – you notice how that talk about Aaron Rodgers not refusing to run the Shanahan scheme, and they couldn't wait to see Matt LaFleur's offense because Rodgers just wants to stay in shotgun. And I kept going, guys, he's closer to Sean McVay than he is Kyle Shanahan. And Sean McVay uses the heck out of shotgun. This is what I was talking about. You've got Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota who comes from the same coaching tree. He's under center most in the league. So just because you're from the same coaching tree doesn't make it the same exact approach to that. The terminology is the same. That's why quarterbacks can hop in and out of those offenses and from team to team that's run them. The terminology is the same. The plays, the passing concepts are exactly the same. They're just doing it out of different sets, different looks. The illusion of complexity with simplicity at the base. That's Bill Walsh 101. All of these young coaches have come up through that Bill Walsh tree.
And every coach is going to have their own, twist on things. It's
Absolutely.
like we talk about that on the defensive side of the ball. Barry's running his version of a Fangio type defense. You're going to put your own take on anything.
Yeah, for sure. So under center, the most bookmark that, right? Motion, they run motion 50% of the time. That's 16th most in the league. Okay. So they don't do that very often. Or about middle of the pack, I should say. Gap run, their gap run 24% of the time. That's 30th in the league. Their zone run 76% of the time, and that is third highest in the league. What do you guys hear me refer to this offense as, this type of offense? Wide zone boot, right? That's what's so frustrating about us getting away from the zone run in our own run scheme. Now, last week it worked great against, I think we would all agree, a pretty solid defense, right? I remember going to that game, everybody was talking about how good this defense is, man. Packers going to struggle here against this defense. They go out there and score 33 points. Pretty impressive. But again, zone run 76% of the time, third most in the league. Play action, they play action 30% of the time. That's third most in the league. Drop back is 70% of the time. That's 30th in the league in just drop back. You're going to see a lot of play action from under center is what we're going to see here. Now, as far as them facing man, they face man coverage 27% of the time. That's 11th most in the league. Versus zone, 58% of the time. That's 20th most in the league. Versus the blitz, 27. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Zone was 59% of the time, 20th in the league. These are so small. Versus the blitz, 27% of the time. That's 10th most in the league. They're under pressure 36% of the time. That's 18th most in the league. Short drop, 30th in the league. Deep drop, second in the league. So they like the deep drops for sure. Now, when you look at the EPA, remember, we just explained EPA. It's a result-based metric, okay? We need to put that into perspective. But when you look at EPA, let's kind of focus on the positives real quick. When they run no motion, they actually have the fourth highest EPA in the entire National Football League. Okay, you're kind of seeing, okay, what do they do well here, right? And then we'll go through the negatives. Here's a ninth best on drop back. So when they go no motion and drop back, they're having quite a bit of success according to EPA, right? And then deep drop, their deep drop game, they're fourth most in EPA and highest EPA. Now, what do they do bad? Let's go to the 22nd number here. When they use motion, right, their EPA is 22nd in the league. So they're not very successful on plays that they use motion. Gap run, when they run gap run, you want to know why they run zone heavy? On gap run, they're dead last in EPA when they run gap. When they have a gap run system, okay, or scheme, I should say. Zone run, they're 13th. So you can see how it significantly improves there. Something else they're kind of bad at down here at the bottom, their short drop game. So what you're seeing, Tim, heavy play action, a lot of under center, right? This is how they approach the offensive side of the ball. And when they don't use motion, they're having the most success. So if I were on that coaching staff and I'm looking at a self-scouting system, okay, here's what's going wrong, guys. It would kind of determined to me that, hey, all right, I would come to the determination of, all right, what do we want to do? What are we most successful at? All right, let's eliminate most of the motion here, okay? And let's play the drop back game, right? Because you're not in EPA, and deep drop game. So what defense would be best to defend that? This is from a coaching point. So forget the stats. The stats may say something totally different. We're talking about EPA ranking and how a coach looks at a game plan going into that week. You probably suggest you play a little quarters. People are cringing right now, going, oh, God, we're going to give up 500 yards. Yeah. And you might only give up 17 points. Remember, we were doing that weeks ago before we decided to go man heavy. Last week we went man heavy. How did that work out?
Yep.
We didn't have our players. You had Jaire Alexander, thought he was all world.
I hope we're as close to what – I know this sounds crazy, but 59% and 27%, I hope that's about where we're at. Hope we're in zone about 60% of the time.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see how Joe Barry attacks this because you don't have Jaire out there, right? Yeah. I think we'd all agree before Jaire came back, the defense was playing. Now, listen, they've struggled all season long at times, but you guys heard us talking about this. The defense was really amping up, right? And the Joe Barry critics were, yeah, man, this offense is the problem. People don't want to acknowledge this offense is the problem. That actually happened. You can, unless they've deleted the tweets, I'm sure they all have it. You could tell that happened throughout the season. There was a point when all we were talking about was how bad this offense was, and it's kind of flip-flop now. We talked about when Savage gets healthy, is it going to upset the way these DBs are playing? It's kind of what happened. It's not to put the blame on Savage. It's just it's obvious Joe Barry approaches the game plan different when he's got his quote-unquote starters out there. You know why? He plays it safer when he's having to play with the young guys, and that's the true bend but don't break approach. Last week, the opposite of bend but don't break. That's funny how the people 2 weeks ago who were ranting and raving over bend but don't break broke, the bend but don't break broke. Last week we went aggressive with blitz and man coverage. Did it break? And which game turned out worse for the defense? It's just it's worth mentioning. It's worth mentioning. So, all right, with that being said, let's get into the PFF preview. When we look at it from this perspective, Tim, this is our 34 base. So this is them in 12 personnel, okay? It didn't give me the option to go 21, which this essentially may be their 21. I'm not real familiar with Oliver and whether he plays the H when they're in 21. It may be something, too, that those 21 numbers are when they put their H in the backfield and they just consider him a fullback. It might be that they have a true fullback. I'm not interested enough in the Vikings to dig in and go, okay, how effective is their fullback? That's just not me. Ain't going to happen. So when you look at their front against our base 34, Darisaw on the left is the fourth highest graded tackle in the league at 83.5. He's an absolute stud. You got Reisner at left guard, 57.6. Bradbury at center, 63.5. Ingram at right guard, 60.9. And O'Neal at right tackle, 74.8. He's the 18th highest graded tackle. So you've got two high-quality starting caliber tackles on that offensive line. Their weakness is obviously in the middle, right, between the center and more specifically the guards. Keep that in mind. Now, when you look at our defensive front, our front five, and I'm going to include Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary in that because essentially they are defensive ends, although some people still refuse to acknowledge that. Preston Smith, 70.9. Kenny Clark, 67.9. TJ Slayton, 62.6. Devontae Wyatt, 62.1. And you got Rashawn Gary at a 79.3. That's how they match up. Throw the tight ends into the mix who are going to be chipping and blocking from time to time. You got Munt as your starting tight end there with our boy out now, with Hawk out, 68.6. That's how they've got it listed. So it kind of tells me maybe Oliver is an H-back. He's the 8th highest graded tight end. The fact they don't have him listed as the number 1 tight end in the 12 personnel probably suggests he might be playing H. 77.1. That's someone who's being schematically sound. You don't get that high of a PFF grade and be bad at blocking. So I'm sure he's playing at a stud level. It might be the key piece that's making that thing go, which is kind of what we're seeing. He's not grading out quite that high, but you're seeing Tucker Kraft kind of fit that mold a little bit for us here lately. Josiah DeGuara not panning out has really hurt Matt LaFleur's offense. And with that being said, his offense is still continuing to grow and get better every week. That's pretty impressive, man. So when you look at the front five versus their front five and attach the tight ends as well, Tim, anything stick out to you, bud?
Yeah, the interiors of these lines, both sides of the ball, pretty evenly matched there. Their guards and their center versus our big dogs in the middle there, Slayton, Clark, and Devontae Wyatt. So, and they look pretty solid there at their tackles. So as far as the edge rushing goes, I mean, I think, we got to win in the trenches. I know we say this every week. It's true every week, but we need games out of Kenny and TJ and Devontae Wyatt. If we can get that pressure in the middle and be stout in the middle of that line, I think it can create opportunities for us. But our secondary, you see, Osborne's no joke as a receiver. I mean, he's not lights out, grading out at a 55, but you got Justin Jefferson over there. And it does make me a little, I'm not going to use the word nervous, but, proceed with caution. We got rookie corner and a rookie safety back there with Justin Jefferson running wild. So it'll be defense by committee over there on that side of the ball every down for sure. But I do think, looking at this right here, it's going to come down to our guys in the trenches in the middle.
Yeah, it always does too, man. That's why it's so important. It's so important to make sure that you've got the right guy in the right place. I'm trying to pull this up. Someone asked a question in here about Oliver. Deadfish says Oliver, the 8th tight end. Who is he? I've got his profile pulled up here right now on PFF. Like I said, 77.1 grading out. I'm trying to see where his snaps were taken, if I could find it real quick without too much dead air here. It's going to be hard to pull this off, though.
I do agree with the sentiment that, Munt over there, their other tight end, might be utilized more, in their run game as opposed to the passing attack, like you were saying, maybe as an H-back.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to see if we could find where he lines up, and I can't find it here. So I was hoping that we, as far as snap counts, I'm sure there's a way to do it here on PFF. I just don't have time to do it in real time. But as far as, snap count in general, it sounds like he's played quite a bit. I mean, he's not fitting the H-back role for sure. 6'5", 259.
Right.
Maybe he has had a limited amount. I mean, when you look at the snaps, yeah, as you're looking at the snap count here, I'm just going to rattle them off. Weeks 1 through 16, Deadfish. 13, 7, 14, 14, 8, 15, 14, 21, 12, 19, 22, 10, 16, 21, and 7. Only 213 snaps on the year. So it sounds like he might be that H-back or that that second tight end, which explains why PFF has him where they're at. This kind of feels like, honestly, Deadfish, this feels like they're Rudy Ford. It's like he continues to grade out high, and it's like, why the heck ain't he on the field more? So,
right.
But again, without watching too much Vikings tape, it's hard to tell. All right, running back. Just want to mention Chandler is listed as their starting running back, grading out pretty good, 74.6. That's pretty solid. Nick Mullins at quarterback, 52.9. If he plays, obviously they got Josh Dobbs, and they got another option there as well. So, it depends on who they're going to start at quarterback. No matter who they start at quarterback, I promise you PFF does not have a high grade on them, okay? Now, that doesn't mean anything, right? Anything can happen on any given Sunday. It's all about the game plan, playing to the strengths of the quarterback. I will say this about Nick Mullins. I hope Nick Mullins plays. Listen, he could light you up 400 yards. I remember when I think it was in San Francisco one year, or maybe it was the Rams. I can't remember where he was at. Had a huge game. Everybody's like, who's Nick Mullins? And then next thing you know, the next game he's throwing 3 interceptions. That's the type of player he is. So that would suggest bend but don't break, let him make a mistake, right?
Mm-hmm. And watch for a heavy dose of the outside zone run with this team, and then Mullins trying to get some things going. But, yeah, I mean, we're in a good position if, we want him throwing the ball, because eventually he's going to make that mistake. And like I said, if our interior can play good and get some pressure in his face, that's going to create opportunities for turnovers.
Yeah, for sure, man. It looks like Deadfish done some digging too. He said Oliver averages a little over a reception a game. He's got to be their age. So, all right. With that being said, inside linebackers on our defensive side of the ball, Quay Walker, 58.4, Isaiah McDuffie, 56.3, the 71st out of 82 linebackers and the 74th out of 82 linebackers. So they're continuing to struggle there in the middle. Let's hope they have a big game. Now, when we go to the secondary, let's go ahead and trigger up their 11 personnel, okay, to our nickel defense. You add Powell into the slot at a 63.9. On the boundary, you've got the superstar, Justin Jefferson, 90.9, third highest graded wide receiver in the league. You got Osborne on the other side. He grades out really low, but that dude, it just seems like every time you watch a Vikings game, he's making a big play. It's obvious he's inconsistent. That's the big thing about PFF is that if you're inconsistent, that you're going to look like you're one of the worst wide receivers in the league. That's just kind of how things grade out there from a season standpoint. He's the 105th of 122 wide receivers. So with that being said, Justin Jefferson, that's the guy you got to stop. Stop the running game. Like you said, Tim, they like to play under center, and stop Justin Jefferson. How do you do that? You got to have players who are smart enough within the scheme to be able to bracket cover him if you're going to try to take him away when you're playing primary zone defense. Now, if they stick with man coverage, hold on tight, right?
Oh, boy.
If you're going to play heavy man and you have him follow, like, by the way, last week we had Jaire in the slot 7 snaps. He's only played in the slot 15 times this year. So he pretty much, that's the most of any game this year that he's played in the slot, and he got torched. So is Valentine that guy to follow him? I don't know. I kind of feel like you want to revert back to your zone match scheme here. Play a lot of cover 3, put the safety in the box. You don't have to play shell. Yep. Stop the run. Play 1 gap when they go to 21 looks and they put 2 gaps in the back. You got to go to 2 gap, put that extra guy in the box, which I know people don't believe it, but Joe Barry has done this year. We've showed it time and time again on Chalk Talk. The problem that I have, though, man, when we look at this matchup across the board, Valentine, 59.9. Keyshawn Nixon, 57.5. Eric Stokes, 51.5. Eric Stokes is about to dip into the 40s, guys. I am so sick and tired of hearing we've got a bunch of first-round picks. Because just because you're a first-round pick doesn't make you a great player. I'm not here to dog, and it's okay he's battling an injury. His grade last year was in the 50s, if I remember correctly, before he got hurt. Like, at some point, we've got to acknowledge, okay, maybe this is who he is. I hate to say it, but, I mean, guys, we're in week 16, 17, right? Week 17. At some point, we got to acknowledge this might be Kevin King again.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, huge athletic profile, but my goodness, man. And what I remember seeing on tape last year with Stokes was in man coverage, he couldn't locate the ball.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is you turn on his SEC tape and he could locate the ball. And it's just like all of a sudden, I know the NFL is a whole different beast, right? And you got much quicker wide receivers. And that can, it doesn't free you up to play at your fastest. I get all that. But you're seeing a big issue with this cornerback room. Now, granted, you go across the board, Valentine's 7th-round pick, Keyshawn Nixon, still don't know where he was drafted, honestly. Kind of picked him up off the trash heap there 2 years ago, and we're trying to force him into that slot. It's not working out, in case you guys need help understanding that. I don't think you do. I think you're looking at this going, this is ugly. And then Eric Stokes underperforming. Jonathan Owens, the free agent signing, we said last year, guys, or going in this offseason, he's the only other safety that graded out. I think he graded out worse than Darnell Savage, or it was vice versa. They were the 2 lowest graded safeties, according to PFF, in the entire league last year that had a significant enough amount of snaps to qualify for that list. He is showing you exactly what he is. Good tackler. Had some decent games, right?
Yep.
58.5. Anthony Johnson Jr., people want to dogpile on him. I'm proud of Anthony Johnson Jr. just going after and trying to hold his own as a 7th-round pick. I just don't understand why Rudy Ford is not starting at free safety. It makes no sense to me.
Yep.
Anthony Johnson Jr., 44.0. So
yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think Rudy's our best foot forward on that side.
Yeah.
And I'm an Anthony Johnson Jr. fan. I've been talking about him since camp, but I do think he needs time to develop. And I know it's hard to develop if you're not on the field, but, I don't know. We'll see, though. I mean, any given Sunday, right, Clay? I mean, we could get pleasantly surprised here and see some good performances.
That's what we're hoping for, and no better time to peak than right now, right? And play your best ball. Let's hope that they can do that. I'm going to try to look at – go ahead.
I'm with you, though. We need minimal man. I mean, you got to pepper in some man here and there, I think. But I wouldn't make that a point of emphasis. You're going to get lit up. You're going to get lit up in man coverage.
Omer points out in the chat that Keyshawn Nixon was an undrafted free agent. So just to kind of confirm that, he wasn't even drafted. We're trying to patch this thing together with guys. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're missing on first-round picks. It's like you swing in the first round. They're either a first-round pick or they're 7th or undrafted. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's hardly anything in between. Doug says Owen stacking some decent, not great games from PFF. No, just pulled it up. This is his game-by-game basis, his PFF grade. 57.3, 60.1, 65.1, 48.9, 54.2, 65.6, 51.5, 40.5, 71.3, 58.9, 62.2, 66.3, 65.9. If you consider 60s decent, yeah, he's playing more consistent now than he has all year. That's a plus, right? His best game came in week 12 against Detroit at a 71.3. But yeah, he's put in back-to-back 60-plus games. It's just we're getting to the point now, Doug, where we're settling on 60s being okay, that's good enough. That's not good enough. Like you guys know, and I feel really confident saying the coaching staff and Brian Gutekunst doesn't put the same amount of stock in a free safety as I do. I just look around the league and go, okay, the best defenses in the league, do they have good free safeties? And by free safeties, meaning a large majority of the time when they run a spinner play to where you just got a single high middle field close, do they have a good safety playing middle field deep, what I call center field? And the question is yes, or the answer is yes. Almost always they've got a good safety, maybe not even great, but someone who's grading out around 70, right, on the year. And it's just something I don't understand the whole Rudy Ford thing, man. I'm gonna look his grade up because maybe I am overlooking that, and he's played bad here of lately. I don't know. Let's see if we can find Rudy Ford.
I think it's just tough. We haven't had any consistency at that position group. The guys have been rotated in and out so much that it's hard to really have anything to build on. And then you add in the injury factor. That doesn't help either. You're half the year is trying to get back from injury, and then half of your game experience is trying to get back up to speed. And it's just you're discombobulated would be the word I would use. Is just it's hard to have any kind of rhythm when you're playing musical chairs back there.
Right, there's limited to no continuity. All right, so Rudy Ford grades on the year, okay? 52.1, 55.1, 88.2, 73.4, 75.0, 69.7, 65.4, 54.8, and then his snaps dropped to 7-3. He went back up to 62 against Tampa and went back down to 7. So let's pick back up where we ended with the 65.4 in week 8. Starting in week 10, 54.8, 61.5, 63.1, 51.0, 61.9. So if you remove the single-digit snap games, okay, his grades pretty much are 52.1, 55.1, 88.2, 73.4, 75.0, 69.7, 65.4, 54.8, 51.0.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Look at how all over the place those grades are.
Yep. And his stint was from week 3 to week 8. He was solid. So you had literally 5 straight weeks of solid play from Rudy Ford. And then he got the injury, and he hasn't been really reestablished as the starter since, other than the Tampa Bay game, which I think there was an injury that forced that. So it honestly, to me, feels like there's something behind the scenes with Rudy Ford. And I've heard a couple of locker room interviews with him early in the year. It was coming out of training camp. He looked like he was agitated that they weren't naming him the starting safety yet. I don't know. Maybe there's something there we're not seeing. Here's the thing.
Maybe this makes me think about, because we've talked about this with other players, right? We talked about, Quay being a Sam and then coming here and they want him to be the Mike. We've talked about guys that play the boundary. We want them to play slot, or maybe that's the issue. It's like, are these guys feeling like, hey man, this is what I bring to the table, and then I'm being asked to do all this other stuff, and then I try to do it, I don't do it very well because it's not really my style, and then I get benched.
Right.
You know what I mean? It'd be like asking Anders Carlson to go under center and play quarterback, and then we get upset that he's not throwing the ball very well, So I mean, maybe that's where some of this frustration comes from. I don't know. I mean, I do think you need to work to be versatile as a player. I don't care what position you play. You can't just be an edge rusher. You can't just be a boundary corner. We need you to, have some versatility in your game. But I think to punish a player as he's trying to develop that is kind of foolish. And you need to give guys time to develop those skill sets that you're trying to add to their game. So maybe that's some of that frustration.
It could be. And, one of the things that bothers me about how Green Bay kind of drafts is it's like they make the decision coming out of the draft. Okay, yes, he played this position, but we're going to put him here and we're going to make him into this. We're going to mold him into this. And it seems like more times than not, it just doesn't happen. That's the frustrating part. Omer in the chat says Savage was so hyped coming out of college, then disappointing considering that fact. Yeah, he was one of those guys that had all the athletic ability in the world, right? Had the coolest football name coming in. I know that. As a Packer fan, I was so excited about that football name. I'm just being real. It's like you want a defender that's going to be able to play defense and a hard hitter whose name is Savage. I'm sorry. That's just like the perfect football name. It sounds silly, but it is what it is. Here we go. Carly Ray makes a great point, and these are the type of things that need to be mentioned. Carly Ray says, and maybe Rasul's trade affected him too. Anyone who at this point thinks that trading Rasul Douglas did not affect this team in a negative way, they just got their head in the dirt. I mean, it's so obvious. You've seen him. He was the one holding people accountable on defense. He was the one jumping up and pointing and screaming. And I know fans don't like to see that. You don't believe me? Roll back the tape to last year. Anytime Aaron Rodgers did anything but smile, he was being an a-hole. But it's like when there's mistakes being made on the field, you need players that are going to hold each other accountable. You need that. You've seen Jordan do it a couple times this year. And people, they don't mention it. I'm glad he's doing it. You've seen him out a couple times.
It's funny you bring up Aaron Rodgers because we were talking yesterday about, Aaron's, comments about what Ja was saying last year. And now you look at the relationship that Rodgers and Rasul had, totally different, right? I mean, Rodgers and Rasul, spoke very highly of the way Rasul was leading out on that field and in that locker room. So it makes sense, you see that leadership, and we're seeing the drastic hole that has been left by trading him for, $5 in a bag of footballs, so
right.
Not really, it doesn't look like a good move. It really doesn't.
Cheesehead Murph in the chat said Savage flourished in Pettin's system, struggles in Barry's system. Let's look at how he's graded out over his career, because that I've heard many people say that, Murph. So when we look at how he graded out his rookie year, 67.1, his 2020 season, 75.3, right? 2021, we bring in Barry, 58.5, 47.5, and now a 65.9 on the year here in 2023. So I think there's a lot of merit to that. There is.
Yep. Murph's on the nose with that one for sure.
Yep. So, if we change it up, Mike Pettin came from the whole school of thought from Rex Ryan, right? That was his whole approach. Was he coached under Rex Ryan, if I remember correctly. He was the DC, I think, for Rex Ryan with the Jets, and then took the head coaching job in Cleveland. And, of course, was a horrible head coach. Some great DCs are bad head coaches. People forget he's in Minnesota right now. B-Flow is getting all the credit for all that success up there with that defense in Minnesota. People forget that Mike Pettin's the assistant head coach. And that defense turned around the second they brought him in. Now, obviously, Zimmer gets canned, and they keep Pettin on. I think that may prove to be one of Matt LaFleur's biggest mistakes as a head coach so far, is for whatever reason deciding to fire Mike Pettin. Now, there's going to be fans that pretend like they weren't screaming for Mike Pettin's head, right? I remember. I have a good memory. It was the same thing as it was when you seen San Francisco run all over them. It was fire Mike Pettin, fire Mike Pettin. Just like it was fire Dom Capers, fire Dom Capers, just like it's fire Joe Barry, fire Joe Barry. So, but you're right, Murph. Savage definitely played better in Pettin's system. Savage is practicing this week. Maybe he'll come out and ball out, right? Had a couple of good games this year. He hasn't been able to play up to that level. I know this. The coaching staff believes in him. The front office believes in him, Tim. Like, there's no two ways about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's 9 million reasons to believe in him.
Yeah, right at 8. Yeah, like it was, I think it's 7.
7 million reasons.
7.9, yeah. What's $1 million amongst friends, right?
It ain't what it used to be, Clayton.
Yeah, you got that right. What are you trying to say? Don't get into it. Don't get into it. So when we look at we're almost out of time here. I'm going to try to rattle through it real quick. I want to hit on their defense real quick. Okay, their defensive identity. They're in base defense only 5% of the time. That's 30th highest in the league. That suggests that they play a little big nickel. Okay, little big nickel. That sounds funny, doesn't it? That suggests
like a rapper name.
Yeah, it does. That suggests to me that even though people are in their 21 and 12 personnel, sometimes they like to go to big nickel because it's technically nickel, which they're in 67% of the time. That's 18th most in the league. They play dime 26% of the time. That's second highest in the league. Second highest in the league, they're in dime, which essentially nickel, 5 DBs, dime is 6 DBs. Okay. Just, typically in a dime set, you've got 1 inside linebacker, 4 pass rushers, being interior defensive line, edge, whatever you want to call them. And then you've got 6 DBs. All right. They face gap run 16% of the time, and they're dead last against gap run. Zone run, they face 84% of the time, and they're first at stopping the zone. You want to know why they're so good? I'm sorry, first at running or playing against zone run. They've played a lot of zone run. Their EPA is 21st. You want to know why that they run zone the majority of the time? Because they face zone the majority of the time on defense. And typically when you see other teams that are able to do something or they're leaning on it more, it's a copycat league. I mean, the league has went the zone run really, really heavy, really heavy. Yep. Now, is it cyclical? Will it come back around? We'll find out. Man coverage, they're in man coverage only 11% of the time. That's 31st in the league. So what are we going to see? Everybody's screaming about how awesome this defense is for the Vikings, right? And how we need someone like B-Flow who's going to be aggressive and play man coverage.
Yeah, well, look at
they're in zone coverage 68% of the time. Guys,
there you go.
That's second most in the league.
Numbers don't lie.
They bring 3 rushers 22% of the time. 3 rushers. This is an aggressive defense, and they're aggressive. But they're only bringing 3 rushers 22% of the time. That's the most in the league, right? Now, they also bring 6 rushers, the most in the league at 26%. So what's that tell you? They're either blitzing or they're playing coverage. What is it that we've been doing a lot of? We've been playing a lot of bringing 5 rushers, right? When we blitz, we're kind of bringing 5 right in the middle. So if you back up 3 rushers 22% of the time, that's most in the league. 4 rushers 30% of the time, that is dead last in the league. 5 rushers 20% of the time, that's 14th. And then 6 rushers 26% of the time, that's first in the league. So just to kind of show you, they're either firing a ton of people or they're dropping everybody into coverage. And their dime is something that they lean on a lot, 26%. So let's see here. Pressure. They get pressure on the quarterback 33% of the time. That's 25th in the league. They're not great at pressuring the quarterback, but when you blitz that many people, that's why you're hitting home. Middle field closed. They run that 42% of the time. That's 21st in the league. They run middle field open 37% of the time. That's 24th in the league. Let's look at what they do well and what they do bad, Tim. In their base defense, their EPA is 7th. Okay. Make sure that's right. Yes. Their nickel defense is 17th in EPA. So they're having more success out of their base. All right. When you look at their dime coverage, their dime sets, they're 20th in EPA. All right. When you go to gap run, their EPA against the gap run, 5th in the league. Against zone, it's 21st. When you go to man coverage, when they're in man, you want to know why they're not running man? You want to know why I get so angry when we play man coverage and fans called for it all year last year?
Because they're getting lit up.
They're dead last when they play man coverage according to EPA, 32nd in the league. Zone, they're 16th. When they bring 3 rushers, the EPA is 13th. 4 rushers, they're actually 7th in EPA, although they do it dead last as far as the amount that they just bring 4 rushers. Now, 5 rushers, 27th in EPA. 6 rushers, 22nd in EPA. Pressure, when they get pressure, they're 27th in EPA, which means teams are picking them apart even when they get pressure on the quarterback. Middle field close, when they're middle field close, they're 13th in EPA. When they're middle field open, they're 27th. So that's your defensive identity for the Minnesota Vikings. Anything you want to add there, Tim?
No, I think we covered it.
We're coming down a stretch here. We're going to get it in. We're going to talk about these personnel settings here. So when we're in our 12 personnel, here's the matchups across the board, okay? From left to right, offensive line, Rasheed Walker, 65.3, Elton Jenkins, 65.9, Josh Myers, 58.1. He's now down to 26th. Lowest, I should say, graded center. It's actually highest, but 58.1. He's 26th ranked across the league. John Runyon, 53.3. That's 58th at guard. And then Zach Tom just continuing to be steady Eddie, 76.5, 15th highest tackle in the league. Of course, that would put him somewhere around the top 7. I think he's still in the top 5 amongst right tackles in the league, according to PFF. You've got Tucker Kraft at 60.9. He continues to raise that PFF grade. He's now 33rd in the league. So excited about him, especially with Musgrave possibly getting healthy too. Josiah DeGuara still at 53.0. We've got to find us a true H-back, man. Now, when you look at their defensive front, they run a 34 front. I know many people are saying we should go to a 43. That's the problem. You see Minnesota. Everybody loves this Minnesota defense, and they're running a 34 as well. At right outside linebacker, Jones the second, 34.9, dead last edge in the league. We'll see if he's playing. I'm not sure exactly how the injuries play a role in that. Day at right end, I think he was on the injury list if I remember correctly, 62.8. Phillips in the middle at nose, 58.6. Bullard at 54.2. And then, of course, you've got Daniil Hunter at left outside linebacker at 76.6. Pretty solid year there, 30th highest graded edge defender in the league. Definitely a starting caliber. Some would say a true number 1 edge defender. He's got a lot of sack numbers, but Daniil Hunter, that's kind of been the knock against him, as he grades out a little bit lower in some of the other aspects of the game, but he does have high sack totals for sure. When you look at their linebacking position, Hicks at inside linebacker, 75.2, Pace Jr. at 75.7. They're solid in the middle. The weak side of this defense is going to be the left side. Of course, you got Bonham that plays free safety at 76.7, and then you've got Harrison Smith, who can come down and play in the box. He's a big box defender, 71.6 at safety. Let's kind of back up here. Let me get your take on this front 5, Tim. As far as the matchup there, outside of Daniil Hunter, the linebackers are what making this defense go there. And when you kind of look at the box defenders, aren't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We would like our guys graded in the mid 70s or higher. In a perfect world, that would be Quay and Zay grading that way. But yeah, I look at the middle of the field, man. It's going to be tough, man. Those linebackers are playing well, and then look at the safety play. These guys are grading out. Harrison Smith grading in a 71.6 this year is actually probably kind of low for him. But that dude is a threat no matter what year it is, what type of season he's having. Solid back there. This is going to be a challenge for us guys offensively in this game, but I think we can get it done. We just have to attack in the right spots. I definitely think again, we got a target to the boundary here when we look at this.
Yeah, it sure seems like it. And work the left side of that run, heavy zone left, and when they put a safety in the box, can out of it and attack through the air. That's probably what it's going to come down to. But when you look at the matchups on the edge, we're talking about as far as the outside the perimeter, Romeo Dobbs, 69.8 for the Packers. Dontavian Wicks is now 76.6, 27th highest graded wide receiver in the league. That is our number 1 receiver, guys. I don't care what anyone says. He is our number 1 receiver. Let's hope he can get healthy. I want to see him have every snap that he can possibly get this rookie year and set himself up to be an absolute stud next year. The future's bright, man. It really is. Jordan Love, 78.4. He's now the 15th highest graded quarterback in the league. He continues to play solid. I think last week he was at like 77, so he raised another point and a half. Aaron Jones had his best game of the year. I think we would all agree he looked like the old Aaron Jones for the first time. 65.9. He seems to be healthy. That could be huge in this game. Working a little RPO action off the left side kind of gets me excited in this game. Now, when you look at their DBs, Evans on the boundary over there, he is 62.6. On the other side, you've got Blackman at 78.1, having a great year there. And then, of course, like we said, Harrison Smith at strong safety, 71.6, and Bonham at a 76.7. When we trigger our 11 personnel, which throws their nickel out there, I can't see the name exactly. Is that Metellus? Is that what that says, Tim?
That's what it looks like, yeah. Okay.
Metellus is grading out as the 22nd highest corner in the league. They've actually got it listed as a safety there of 22 of 95 safeties, which is interesting. That kind of suggests that as they're blitzing, they may be belling him out and he's truly playing safety at times. I could be wrong. Go watch the tape yourself. I definitely don't have the time to dig into all the Vikings tape, but 72.7, man, that's a solid PFF grade there. Obviously, Jaden Reed being healthy, he's our primary slot receiver, 70.2, having a great year, grading out 47th highest. So essentially what you got there is Wicks being a true number one and Reed and Dobbs being good number two wide receivers. So the young wide receiver room's looking good. Now, when you look at how this nickel may play here, play a role in that, putting him down there into the box and playing nickel, that kind of shores up you trying to run out of 11 personnel. If we go back to the was it the identity? Yeah. I want to look at this real quick. So remember, they play a lot of dime, right? We talked about that second highest amount of dime. Maybe that's where that corner comes in and he's playing safety. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that could be kind of the case there when he's lining up in the quote unquote slot slash safety. So just wanted to kind of take a quick peek there with all that information we just talked about. Percentage rank, again, they play zone second most. They're blitzing more than anyone with 6+ rushers, which means they're playing a lot of zone blitz is what they're doing. This could be a big, big opportunity for Jordan Love. This might be a breakout game for Jordan Love because if they're going to be playing zone blitz, right, and obviously they're going to try to trick Jordan. Jordan has protected the ball so well. What has he got now, Tim? Is it 11 touchdowns and 1 interception here of lately?
Something like that on this run, yeah.
So if he continues to ball out like that, they go middle field close and middle field open pretty evenly there. They're 21st and 24th in that regard. EPA with middle field closer a little bit better. That's probably a lot of that zone blitzing that's going on. What's their EPA? Let's look at this real quick. In zone, their EPA is 16th in zone. And when they bring 5 or more rushers, it's 27th and 22nd. So you're seeing they live by the sword early on in the year, and they're dying by the sword right now. They're getting kind of picked apart. So I'm eager to see what happens there. Now, when we looked at the summary, I want to pull this up because look at their schedule. I triggered their schedule on the right. Look at that stint there in the middle where they went win, loss, win, 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 win. They won 5 in a row, right? Went on a run. Loss, loss, win, loss, loss. Okay, and when you look at the scores there, look at how many points the opposing team scored. Detroit scored 30. Cincinnati scored 27. They held the Raiders to 3, and they won that game. It's just mind-boggling to me. The Bears only scored 12 points, and the Broncos scored 21. That kind of started that little skid here. I'd be hammering the over in this game. With the way our defense is struggling and how they're struggling here of late, I'd probably be hammering that over once again. And what is the over? Let me go back to the green line real quick. Again, don't take this as betting advice, just something to take into consideration of how they played here lately. I wouldn't be surprised you come out and it's a 13-10 game either. It is the NFL. But when you look at the over-under, it is on this page, is it not? Yeah, here we go, 46.5. So 46.5 points is the over-under. Yeah, it kind of feels like that. You could hit that over there. So anyway, that's got it, guys. That's the summary essentially. Other than this one last thing, quarterback comparison, I just wanted to point it out real quick. Jordan Love, 78.4. Nick Mullins, 52.9. So just something to kind of take with you on the way out. Tim, parting thoughts, man. We got through it, dude. Look at us staying on topic. I apologize for ignoring the chat, guys. I just, 1 second I got people saying, hey, I want you to dive deep into the stats, into the analytics. The next second I got people saying, hey, you need to focus on the chat. So I'm trying to find that happy medium. You guys, thank you for your grace as we try to find the sweet spot here. We leaned on the chat heavy last night, and I got roasted for it. So we'll continue to do the best we can in that regard. So anyway, Tim, parting thoughts, boy.
I think talking about Jordan Love here having potential for a big game. I see it, and I think we can directly attribute that success and growth to Jordan Love's pre-snap reads. He's diagnosing much better than he was in the earlier parts of the season. And he's coupling that with better post-snap reads, getting the ball out a little quicker. We still see it at times that he's throwing that swing pass late, or hesitating to throw a check down or hesitating to get rid of it, but not as much as we saw early on, especially during that 4-game skid where he was just standing in there getting smacked around.
Right.
We don't see that anymore. And I think that's where we're finding more success recently here with our offense is because, you see it, you got to say it. Jordan's seeing it. He's, hey, can, alert. And, the boys are ready. And he is, we saw that early on. He was checking to the run when he should have stayed with the pass. And he was, checking to a pass when we should have stayed to the run.
He was late.
We're not seeing that now. Now we're seeing he's reading. And, we have to remember there's a reason why we're biting our nails going, okay, dude, snap the ball. There's 2 seconds on the play clock. It's like you need every single tick of that play clock to get a read on that defense. I look more at when are we breaking the huddle? Are we breaking the huddle with enough time to get lined up and see what they're doing? And I think at this point, this offense is starting to put those kind of things together. And this game is going to come down to that because, like you said, Clayton, they're going to throw these looks at him. And, maybe disguise coverages. You may see Harrison Smith drop down from time to time and try to bait Jordan into some of these, misused checks. And absolutely. I think Jordan's been all over it lately. So hopefully we see more of that on Sunday night.
There's going to be some sugar going on. There's no doubt about it. And Harrison Smith, you heard Aaron Rodgers say it last year. Harrison Smith is the absolute best in the league at sugaring, at disguising looks. He's just so confident in his ability to get to his spot. He'll be in the A gap 1 second and covering center field the next. He's really, really good at doing that. Andy A. Pack in the chat says, man, I need a cup of diesel. How do you guys wake up this early? Just worked out and I feel like death. I'll tell you how we do it. We don't work out, my man. So appreciate you swinging through, Andy. You're awesome, dude. Mike Hebring in the chat says, Keyshawn Nixon is literally the only player in the NFL actually returning kickoffs. He has 738 yards on 28 attempts. The second player in the league has 391 on 15 attempts.
All going according to plan, right? They want to get rid of the kickoffs, so
I want him to just be a kickoff returner, man. That whole experiment with the slot's over. It is. Like, at some point, I have a hard time believing there's no one else that's available right now in free agency or anything, and all year long. And you guys know, listen, this is not me going, they shouldn't have done this. Like I knew. I was excited about this experiment going into the season. I was completely wrong. This completely flopped. And I was the biggest believer in, hey, he's a football. He just looks like he's got a knack for finding the ball. He's a hard hitter. His tackling has been horrible this year, right? But as far as kick returns, I mean, let's just let him focus on kick and punt returns, right? That's kind of that's where I'm at here with the Keyshawn Nixon thing. And maybe this is the week that we see Long come into play. Long, to the best of my knowledge, is still the highest graded corner on this roster, the guy that they picked up a couple weeks ago. And he's played this year. So on another team. So just something to keep in mind there. Derek K says, what about Jaire?
Get out of here.
You're going to get them stirred up, buddy. You're going to get them stirred up. Drew D said, honestly, no matter what happens, this was a successful season. We said we wanted to know if Love is the guy, and we figured that out. Now our goals have shifted to playoffs, baby. It's so awesome, Drew. I'm so glad you bring it back into perspective, man, because 6 to 10 wins. Hey, 6 to 10 wins is what we're expecting. Anything over 6, you're playing with the house's money. The fact that guys, we're in December and we have meaningful football. That's why I get extremely pissed off when the gatekeeper said, can we stop talking about playoffs? You can stop talking about them.
Yeah, you can just stop talking altogether. We'd be happy.
I'm sure glad they didn't stop talking about them in 2010. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, there was no one that was going to Packers as the team to beat here. There was nobody saying that until we won in Philly, and then we won in Atlanta. And then it was like, oh, wait, we might, yeah. Then we won in Chicago, right? And then all of a sudden you come out and you pretty much dominated Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl. Yep. I'm not suggesting this is a Super Bowl, caliber team. I'm just simply pointing out nobody was saying that in 2010. And these gatekeepers have got to stop, man. They got to stop.
And it ain't over till it's over. And we know what we control, which is winning our games. That's all this team can do. You got to win.
Absolutely. Mike Hebring in the chat says, F the chat haters. I like it. I think there needs to be a good blend of it all, Mike. I've got to stop caring so much about what other people think as far as advice on the show. I think we got a good thing going, and the reason I know that's because the good feedback we get, and also when I end the show, when I get up in the morning, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to do Good Morning Lambeau, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to talking ball with y'all, and to me, that's all that matters. If there's one person, 5 people in here hanging out with us while we're talking ball, it's worth it. It's worth it to me. So, last night it's funny. I was telling Tim offline. It's like, I left the title the same because people were complaining about me not changing the title. I say people, it was one person. And lo and behold, we kept the title the same. We come in here and we had over 100 people live viewing, and it was great conversation about Jaire. Right, it was a good in-depth conversation about it. So I think we're doing something right. Cheesehead Murph said, "I've been screaming that too." PTA Clay, put Long in and Keyshawn on kick return. What we got to lose, right, Murph? I mean, the worst thing that could happen, he could grade out in the 40s and go, okay. Keyshawn got burnt in man coverage. He got burnt in zone last week. The corner route right at the end of the game. I'm pretty sure that zone, if I remember correctly. I need to go back and watch it again. But he got burnt on a corner route, and everybody's going, how in the world does Barry let them get out of bounds there? I promise you Barry wasn't going, guys, don't worry about the out of bounds line. But Keyshawn got burnt. It's just not working. I think Long could play, just as good as any of these corners. That goes for Valentine. That goes for Valentine, everybody. Because, again, I think he's grading out in the mid to upper 60s. He's the highest graded corner in our cornerback room right now. So there you go. We got people singing it in here, so let's hit it one time.
John Deere green on a hot summer night. He rode Billy Bob the Charlene.
I always want to end it right after John Deere green, but man, he says Charlene so country. I can't pass it up, right? And I do want to do this. Yeah, we don't want to forget the true MVP there in 2006, Mr. Fiddles, Christmas MVP. I mean, man, I should have saved that video of that dude getting attacked by that cat on Christmas. It was a solid performance there. Sure. Love to see his PFF grade.
Might have got away with illegal hands to the face, but it was close.
I need to Photoshop that in. I need to go back to 2006 PFF grades. I don't even know if they had them in 2006. But need to Photoshop in and put Mr. Kittles in there somewhere, like a 92 elite grade, right? So there you go. All right, we're out of here, guys. Appreciate y'all. You guys are awesome. We will be back tonight for PTA Live. We're gonna effort Paul Brettel, try to get him in here to straighten us out a little bit on the week that was and the week that might be. And then, of course, if we've got time, we're going to get Chalk Talk put together. I've basically got everything charted out. I got the 17 plays picked. I got to cut them up, add in all the text. It takes time. So forgive me if we don't get to Chalk Talk until Friday or Saturday, okay? But I'm going to do my very best to get that put together. Like Tim suggested, we may go a little long tonight. We might do Chalk Talk after Paul Brettel. There's a possibility of that. But I got to run into town and then get back in time to make that happen. So, like I said, guys, we're doing our best to keep everything kind of rolling along here. I'm not going to BS you. Fatigue has set in a bit. Doing 2 shows a day, every day for an entire NFL season for the most part. It's starting to set in. So we're going to try to finish strong here, as Lombardi used to say. But we're out of here. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world, and go Pack Go.